Friends, allies, and Americans, welcome to the Defense of Democracy podcast, where we tell the stories of folks who defend your children's rights by advocating for inclusive public school systems and who fight for diversity across our nation. I'm your host, Karen Swoboda. Let's get into it. On today's podcast, it is my pleasure to welcome Kristen Browde. Kristen, welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
Great. Nice to be with you.
Nice to be with you too. Kristen is an attorney, an activist. She has lived in both New York and now lives in Florida. It definitely has some important tales to tell, and has seen a lot and been quite active in defense of the LGBT community and the attack on trans rights and a lot of things that have been happening nationally. And it is a tough fight, and Kristen is a tough woman. So Kristen, I would love to introduce you and just you tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a reformed television news reporter and anchor turned lawyer. I moved down to Florida a couple of years ago because we had done so well in New York. In New York, we, with the cooperation of the state legislature and now two different governors, first Governor Cuomo and now Governor Hochul, managed to put into place anti-discrimination provisions in state law that protect not just LGBTQ plus people, but literally everybody in the state. When that legislature flipped, when the state Senate in specific flipped back in 2018, the floodgates opened and we were able to move through tremendous progressive legislation and get it signed into law. New York led the way. So when my youngest child went off to college, I'm sitting in Chappaqua, New York going, okay, I don't need a big house. Where's the battle now? And Florida is where the battle was.
That's right. Yeah.
So that's where I moved. I'm now active in the Florida Democratic Party, and we are trying to achieve the same success that we had in New York down here. I got to tell you, it's a lot tougher down here than it was up there. But we got to remember that in New York, we battled for decades to flip that state Senate. Now down here, like I said, it's tougher. It isn't just 5 state senators we have to flip. It's a lot more.
Right.
But we have people in office right now who are doing their best to help us by being as awful as they are, by being as difficult, bigoted, anti-democratic as they are. And people, I think, have had enough. So we're not likely to flip the entire legislature this election cycle, but that's the goal. Flip the election first at the state House level, then at the state Senate level, and then start working on statewide races too. And we have tremendous advantages this cycle in that Florida enacted one of the most draconian abortion bans in the nation, a 6-week ban. And as you're well aware, and viewers are probably well aware, most women don't know they're pregnant at 6 weeks. So it effectively has made abortion in Florida unattainable. There are virtually no exceptions, and it's intolerable. So on the ballot this fall is an initiative that's a citizen petition initiative. We collected 1.2 million signatures on petitions to put a constitutional amendment on the ballot that would guarantee that only a woman and her doctor get to make the choice, not a bunch of state legislators in Tallahassee. So that's going to bring out people who are progressive and concerned. And frankly, it's going to get some Republicans, some Republican women to cross over. And once they see that we are not fire-breathing, awful people, maybe we can get them to stick around.
So, and that is, I mean, I'm, defense of democracy. We focus on schools. We don't, get too involved in anything else, climate change, abortion rights, but just speaking as an observer of the political circus, it does seem like abortion rights are a weak point.
They are. And frankly, Defense of Democracy has been terrific in going after school boards that Moms Against Liberty have
Hmm.
taken over. We have that problem here. As you know,
Yes.
Moms Against Liberty was founded in Florida
Hmm.
and still controls a decent number of school boards. They fortunately, for progressives, have made fools of themselves to the point that
Yeah.
book ban legislation that they sponsored, that they fostered, and got our awful governor, Ron DeSantis, to sign into law, started sweeping up everything you can imagine because it
Hmm.
was so poorly worded.
Mm.
And people went right at them and did what I think was exactly the right thing and started challenging the Bible, the Christian
Yes.
Bible,
Yes.
because it has all those descriptions, graphic descriptions of sex and violence and
Pedophilia, all
yeah,
this,
all of that,
everything. Yeah.
all of incest all over the place.
Hmm.
So the governor has now backed off and said, well, we're going to put in restrictions on what books you can ban, and you have to actually live in the district, and you have to. And now he's getting sued by the right wing because they said, no, 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 we should be able to ban all the books we want.
Right.
The people who ban books and burn books have never been the good guys. People get that.
Yes. So one of the things that really fascinates me on your story as an individual is something you kind of glossed over. I just think it's amazing that you felt that, not that my work here is done in regard to New York, because as somebody
Not
who is a
right.
resident of New York,
It's not.
it's not
No,
done. But to be the kind of person to say, where's the fight, and let's go, right? And to bring yourself really to the heart of it. Um was that, I mean, you're so pragmatic when I speak to you, right? Like, you're an attorney, you've got you're a journalist, you know how to research. Was it an eye opener to finally get down there and be in the thick of it? It was.
for sure.
Wow.
For sure. Look, and I should preface this by saying that I had the privilege to do this. I mean, got to recognize. Look, I'm about to be 74. I'm an out trans woman,
Yep.
and I have the privilege and the means to be able to do what I see as a moral imperative, which is to fight this fight.
Hmm.
I recognize that that's simply a product of that privilege.
Yes.
But the reality is that things down here, I knew they were going to be bad, but they got
Really.
a whole lot worse, a whole lot faster than I would ever have imagined, all because the governor down here, Ron DeSantis,
Hmm.
decided he wanted to run for president, and he thought the only way I can do this is to out Trump Trump, to come at him from the right.
Right. Yeah.
It didn't work.
Hmm.
Ron DeSantis, who, by the way, as someone who wears high heels, he's got to learn to walk in them.
Yeah.
Um, no,
Hmm.
okay, that's my little trans.
Listen,
Read him out.
we're all human. I saw it too.
Read him out. Um,
Yeah.
but but he won't be president of the United States. The United States, the electorate saw who he is,
Okay.
and it's our job down here as the Florida LGBTQ plus Democratic Caucus and the Florida Democratic Party to make the world know that this guy is unstable, unprincipled, and awful,
Hmm.
and stands for exactly the opposite of what real Americans stand for. Because real Americans want you to be a good neighbor. They
Hmm.
want you to pay your taxes, keep your area clean, make your neighborhood safe. And that's what we're working to do.
Yes.
And it's not strictly partisan. I mean, one of the organizations that I work with is called the Downtown Neighborhood Association because I live in downtown Miami
Hmm.
and I'm on their traffic safety and parks committees. And we're fighting local issues,
Yes.
to make our neighborhood better. And when they see that people like us are just trying to make a better place for their families and for their make their community better, they're going to go, oh, wait, DeSantis and that crew are saying, you guys are all horrible, you guys are all dangerous. No, no, we're not.
Right.
Um, we're not the ones putting guns on the street. We're not the ones trying to tell you you have to be this religion or that religion, or you can do this, but you can't do that. We're just trying to make better communities where everybody is going to be safe. And
Mhm.
that's a winning message.
Yes, I love that. I absolutely do, because I think that's where we get the words liberty and freedom. Like, part of that is just, it's really simple. Um, Mind your own business for short of a,
Exactly.
if you don't have to love it, but you also don't have to do anything about it if it doesn't affect you. It's
Yeah,
not,
if your religion tells you not to do something, don't do it.
don't do it.
Don't do it. But if your religion tells me not to do something, you can stick your religion somewhere.
Yeah. Absolutely. So in regard to Florida politics and Moms for Liberty in Florida, which, as you mentioned, that is where they started. It's fascinating to me, the a number of opportunities that they have had to crash and burn, and I have my own personal theories as to why that's not happening. But they've done a lot to damage their brand in Florida, and yet they're still going. Like,
Yeah,
how
they are.
how is that? I mean, it's just
They're
money, right?
losing elections. They're losing
They
elections.
are. Okay.
Yeah, they've started to lose elections. And it's ironic that what did it was that they got involved in a sex scandal. The
Right.
founder, the founder of America of Moms Against Liberty, and her husband, who was the chair of the Republican Party,
Yeah.
got involved in ugly, ugly accusations of rape.
Um,
And
and
you know what? Doing exact. I've Look, if that's what you want to do,
right.
if having three ways is your thing, I'm not. It's not for me. If it's for
Yeah.
you,
But
but
there.
don't
But
be
this is.
hypocritical. Don't
Yeah.
be
This is.
hypocritical about it. And their hypocrisy was right there for everyone to see. And that started them really rolling downhill. But what
Mhm.
really got them more than that is when people started seeing where their policies go.
Mhm.
Their policies have badly damaged public schools. Now,
Yes.
to be fair, there is no question but that the policy of the governor of the state of Florida and ultimately Moms Against Liberty
Mhm.
is not to make better public schools. It's to destroy public education and privatize it. And that's what they're doing. Down here, they've gone to an extreme that I don't think has been matched in many states. I certainly hope it hasn't. And that is that now a charter school, which
Mhm.
is basically a for profit operation for the most part, of usually a Republican Party donor, um, when they sign up a student, the allocation, they take the school budget for a town. And if they allocate, let's say, $10,000 a year, I'm making that number up,
Okay.
$10,000 a year per student, the public schools lose that $10,000. The
Yes.
private school gets that $10,000. It doesn't matter whether the parents are billionaires or
Right.
millionaires or poor. They take the money out of the public school budget and use it for the tuition of that student at the public school, at the private school, rather. That decimates. That
And
decimates.
because, and correct me if I'm wrong, but because at charter schools, at these private schools, they don't have to follow all the rules that the public schools.
They
Public
don't have
schools, you
curriculum
have to
requirements.
have, like, the teachers need a certain level of education, and the administrators, and they can pick and choose who they accept. It's a private school.
Exactly.
So, I mean, am I right?
You're absolutely correct. Not only do they pick and choose their students, which means that students with special needs don't
Yeah.
get in. That
Yes.
students who are more challenged educationally don't get in.
Yep.
But what it also means is that there are fewer resources for those students who are in the public schools.
Yeah.
And
You've just funneled
you know,
money out of there.
yes, you're stripping the public schools, selling it for parts. Um, and they've gone one step further. They have changed the requirements for teachers' unions, whereas in a normal union, and I say this as someone who's been a union member and still
Mhm.
carries an active union card for 54 years,
Okay.
um, they've changed. Normally, you win a union election if you get 50% plus one.
Mhm.
Down here, it's 60% plus one. And they required every union to recertify and go back and get every member and get 60% plus one. And they made it special for teachers' unions only. Police unions, fire unions, no, just
So
teachers' unions.
what effect does that have?
What the effect that has is it weakens the collective bargaining and the advocacy for public education, because the
Right.
biggest advocates for public education are the teachers in
Yes.
the schools, because they want to have the resources to teach kids. And down here, this administration has actively worked with the cooperation of Moms Against Liberty
Mhm.
to prevent public schools from functioning well. And I think most parents are going to be outraged. Now, yeah, they're getting to take their kids to private schools at public expense, even if it's religious schools, by the way.
Right.
Um,
Right. That which is shocking.
but I think most people are like, why should that happen? Why
Right.
should there not be means testing? Why
Mhm.
should the richest, who can afford private schools anyway, in
Right.
fact, we're sending their kids to private schools anyway. Why should they get tax dollars to do what they were doing anyway?
Right. It's It's very disturbing. At this point, we're about halfway through the show, and I do my volunteer shout out. So, for
Right.
today's volunteer shout out, I want to highlight some of my volunteers in Florida. And there is a volunteer named Mary who posts regularly in the private Florida Facebook group. And she's really good about kind of collecting these important articles about the funding for Florida's K through 12 public schools. So I want to thank Mary for being such a good researcher and for being someone who shares information that's really important. And a lot of our volunteers do that. Yes. So congratulations and thank you, Mary, for all the good work you're doing for us. Now, Kristen, back to you. Let's now talk about. I mean, I think that what are we in? We're getting into it's summer. Um, Everybody's looking at November. You had talked about, I know it's like you had talked about the importance of local elections and how that affects our national election. Can you expand on that? Because I really do want to communicate how important it is to participate in your local elections and why ultimately being somebody who votes in a local election can absolutely affect the national election, and why that's so important because not enough people are voting in their local elections.
That's for sure. Those down ballot races are vital. Where
Mhm.
do you get your services from? Who fixes your streets? Who collects your garbage? Who provides the police and fire service in your town?
Mhm.
Well, it's not the Congress. It's not the White House. It's not your senator.
Right.
It's your local mayor, your town council, which down here we call a commission.
Mhm.
Um, it's your local committees and community groups, and each down here, almost everything is elected, down to
Mhm.
hospital board.
Huh.
And and you want to know how vital it is? Hospitals are the new target of the far right down here. They are trying to take over community hospitals and put them out of business because they want for profit hospitals run by their friends. And they've done this in a couple of counties. The entire county public health system has been decimated because they were able to elect hospital board members who enacted policies that ultimately shut down they would take out the OBGYN facilities. They would take out pediatrics. And all of a sudden, the hospital can't function. They've done this repeatedly, and they're trying to do it again. And it's, we don't pay attention to that. It doesn't make the news. Um,
Are you talking about specific? Because I would love if you're talking about something specific, I would love to put it in the podcast notes for people to do a little bit of a deeper dive.
there are counties in Central Florida
Okay.
where they have lost their public health systems because the hospital boards have enacted policies that
Wow.
led to the bankruptcy of the system, and they said, well, we're Republican-controlled counties. We're not giving them more money. The hospitals went out of business. They had no choice. They
So,
had no money.
wow. All
Yeah,
right, so you'll share that because I want
yeah,
there's so many different kind of facets to this whole. I mean, it's the dissolution of the, all of our systems, right? That from I mean, that's the Seven Mountain Mandate. That's the
right.
media and the education and business.
Remember, the prominent Republicans the Republican strategist who said, "I don't want to do anything to government other than make it small enough that we can drown it in the bathtub."
Ah,
And and that's what they're trying to do.
mhm,
They are trying to set up autocracies run by people like Donald Trump,
mhm,
where the only thing that matters is that they have enough money to control things.
right.
And and I know it sounds apocalyptic. I get it. I mean, I'm about as centrist. I'm frankly not the world's most progressive Democrat.
Okay.
I'm much more centrist than I think the progressive wing of our party would really love. Um, but guess what? You know, the progressives are absolutely right when they're sounding this alarm, and the rest of us had better wake up before what we have as a society
Mhm,
is transformed in radical, extreme ways that none of us want or none of us are even thinking could happen. But it could. And it starts with local
mhm.
elections. And yes, it's important to make sure that our favorite convicted felon never resumes life
Yes.
in the White House. But it is every bit as vital to make sure that your local government stays sane.
And that is a really interesting way of putting it because and I'm there's about 2,000 listeners to every episode that we have of this podcast. And I think every one of our listeners can kind of take just a moment here and think about your local government and what you know about them and think about, for example, I mean, I can only do it for mine, but how there are some members of my local government who seemed pretty normal for a long time, and now all of a sudden this hard right extremist like dialogue that's coming up, you see it repeated, and I may be more aware because I do a lot with the local politics
Mhm.
and national politics, but I'm seeing it on their Twitter feed that it's just escalating, and it's like trying to sit at the big kids table, like by amplifying these messages of hate. And every time an elected official who is in a position of power, whether you're the mayor or the village trustee or whoever, says something like this, you're galvanizing, you're mobilizing, you're motivating individuals within the community who really do believe these hateful things. And so it's not a means to an end, right? You're if you're doing this as a politician, you need to be voted out, because that is not something, it's not acceptable to be anti-American and be in politics. And it is not, it is certainly doesn't bode well for this country. So everybody from the ground up needs to be pro-democratic, pro the American policies, pro how we run our government, you know, pro government by the people for the people. So the participating in local elections, that's where you get the balance of power at the highest levels, right? You get people who will represent the people. That's so important. So please, please, please go out, make a plan, vote in your local elections, and by all means get ready to vote in the national election.
Well, I'm gonna take it one step further. I'm going to
Okay.
assume that anybody listening or watching a Defense of Democracy podcast is somebody who's already up there.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you, if you're out there watching, don't just do what she said. Do all of what Karen just told you. Absolutely, make a plan. Make sure you vote. Make sure everybody in your family votes. But the important thing, from my perspective,
Mhm.
the most important thing people can do right now is to go outside their circles, to go outside. We talk to ourselves, and that's great because we need to make sure everybody's energized and all our prime voters get out and vote. But this time, more than ever before, it's vital that we expand the circle.
Hmm.
And you do that by having challenging conversations. And I'll give you one example of how it can work, even when you don't think it might.
Hmm.
I was in Tallahassee this past legislative session, and I don't think many in New York know about a politician by the name of Webster Barnaby.
Hmm.
He's an African American preacher from Central Florida who 2 years ago went on a rant in a hearing on an anti-transgender bill, calling transgender people demons, imps, saying I rebuke you, Satan, was his big line,
Oh my
and
God.
saying they didn't belong in Florida.
Okay.
So I'm up in Tallahassee for lobbying days with Equality Florida, and I'm walking by his office, and he pops out. I go, Webster Barnaby, just the person I wanted to meet. And he turns around and sees this older white woman and
Hmm.
thinks, this is good. This is good.
Yeah.
And I go, you know, I just, I don't understand it. I'm 73 years old. I've never had a parking ticket in Florida. I've paid my taxes, raised 2 kids. I own my house. I run a small business. Why are you trying to make my life hell? And he looks at me and goes, what do you mean? I go, well, I'm transgender. Why do you go? I heard what you said. He goes, I wasn't talking about you. I wasn't talking about you. I go, yes, you were.
Yes.
Even if you didn't mean it, you were talking about me. And this opened up in, into 2 hours of conversation over two
Wow.
days. And when the worst of the anti-transgender bills came up, Webster Barnaby, I couldn't get him to vote against it. He took a walk and he took 12 Republicans with him.
No.
Well, House Republicans in Florida didn't vote.
Wow.
Didn't vote. Now, I don't know if my conversation with Webster Barnaby is what led to that outcome, but I do know that his perspective on transgender people was altered by that conversation.
Hmm.
He's not a horrible man.
Hmm.
He's a Christian preacher, is what he is
Yes.
in real life. And he got himself elected, and he had these views. And I hope I opened his eyes just a little bit, and
Hmm.
he didn't vote for the bill. That's how you do it. I mean, that you only get there by having conversations that you think, oh, this guy's going to kill me. He's going to rip into me. But he didn't.
Right. And it's that it really is that human connection. I think that like we make all kinds of assumptions, right? The fear of the unknown. There are people walking around who honestly think they don't know any LGBT people, right? And they
How
are
would you
convinced
know?
of that, right?
How would you know? I mean, I do wear a
I
little
well,
cracker
yeah.
flag on my lapel, even when I go to court. But, and I had one judge go, what flag is that from? I go, uh, at the time I was wearing the transgender flag. I go, it's the
Buckle up.
transgender flag. He goes, really? I go, yeah. Well, that judge, 2 days later in the same case, called me up to the bench after the case was over. He says,
Uh-huh.
I want to show you something. Turns his computer around. He was showing me the wedding photos of his gay daughter.
Oh,
You know,
wow.
you you don't know.
You
You think
don't.
you know. Yeah, some people are visibly trans. Some people aren't. Most people aren't. And
And
the
I want to
hysteria is absurd.
No, it's okay. I mean, you're talking about privilege and I talk about this often on the show, being myself white, straight, and Christian,
Mhm.
and talking about the fact that we don't need silent allies anymore. I have a lot of my friends who are good people, but will not get up to speak, right? And they do with I'm sure the best of intentions say, like you get more. I think one of them did this recently. What is it like? You might get more flies with honey or whatever.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's like it's. And she's so smart and she could be such a well-spoken like advocate, right? But um at this point I don't think that is the way to go. I think that when you see I think that it is a good idea, and I've been doing this for a couple years now before it became something pretty common to say is put yourself, we've all asked ourselves, what would we do if this was Germany like 1929, right? What would we do if, this was America during the Civil War? And I know some people feel maybe not as much, but the putting yourself, and you've always said, oh, I would be the one who would shelter. I would be the one who would be vocal. Why didn't any of those people speak out? Like, it was so obvious that it was wrong. And now we're in this day and age now where the same thing is unfolding, and people are going to look back and say, who spoke out and who was silent? And that's where I want to really, and I'm hoping that my organization, people like you, speaking to people like you, is an inspiration to people to say, you know what, it is not the time to be a silent ally. There are no silent allies. There are vocal allies, and there are the people who are enabling, right? And so that's kind of what I would like to just summarize. Now, I want to also ask Kristen, if people in Florida are listening to this, and you've talked about a lot of the good work you're doing, what do you need? What can people help if they want to get involved with some of your projects?
Well, obviously, if you want to join the Florida LGBTQ plus Democratic Caucus, we're lgbtqdems.org. But if you're a Republican, or down here, we call them NPAs, not party affiliated,
Okay.
represent almost a third of the electorate. Contact Equality Florida. Contact any number of groups. Contact Defense of Democracy.
Yeah.
Indivisible.
Get involved.
Yeah. Make sure down here, one of the things that the Republicans have done is they have said that you can't. It used to be lifetime. You register for vote by mail. You did it once. You got a ballot as long as you wanted one. Now they canceled every vote by mail registration. Said everybody has to re-register and re-register every 2 years. So people don't know this. The number of people registered for vote by mail is down 60%.
Wow.
With an election coming up. Now, why did they do this? Well, Democrats vote more by mail more than Republicans do. And make sure you're registered to vote. Make sure everybody in your neighborhood got their vote by mail ballot, because the infrastructure here isn't like New York, where we have more than adequate.
Yeah.
And we might wait in line for a while,
right.
But people will get to vote. Down here, where it's 90 degrees and it's illegal to give people water online.
I heard that. That's so wild.
That's another little Republican gem that I can't wait to challenge in court. But there's such a long line of things we have to challenge in court that's actually down on the list. But make sure you're registered for vote by mail, because the infrastructure is not there to handle everybody showing up.
Yes.
And in 90-degree heat, you are not going to want to wait on a 4-hour line to vote. That's why everybody votes by mail. And that's why the Republicans canceled your registration.
Okay. So this is my pledge. Defense of Democracy is going to be working with other get out the vote organizations to help amplify and make it easier for people to register to vote. There is, a finite amount of time that you can do that. You cannot wake up the day before the election and think you can register.
Before an election.
Yeah.
Down here. 29 days.
29 days. So we're talking like October, right?
Yeah. And we have an August primary.
Okay. So I am going to make sure in the podcast notes that I include that, but I'm also going to start including it in every email that we send out going forward, and all the messaging that we can do. And, and don't thank me. I want to thank you for joining the podcast and for lending your voice, as you have done so readily and so eagerly in so many different ways. Kristen, when I conclude the podcast, I always like to end it on a positive note. So I'm wondering if you could share, and this could be something personal, whatever, some good news on your end.
Well, the president of our caucus is a amazing trans man by the name of Nathan Brummer, who is in the process of announcing his candidacy for State House down here. We are waiting for word that he is down here, they call it qualifying for the ballot.
Mhm.
Um, that has to happen within the next 3 days. At that point, he will resign from the caucus,
Okay.
which makes me, as the vice president, president of the caucus,
Ooh.
a position for which I am somewhat unprepared, have being much newer to Florida. But I'm telling you this, we are not going to miss a step. We are going to work nonstop between now and this and every election. We are going to get out the word in Florida and beyond Florida that LGBTQ plus people are people first,
Oh,
that we are just the same as you who are not LGBTQ plus, except for one thing. And that thing doesn't matter. You're either a good person or you're not. You're either somebody who contributes to your community or you're not. You're either someone who is a good neighbor or you are not. And when that message gets out, and when people stop trying to demonize and stop being successful because they see the fact, they
yeah.
see that, oh, Ron DeSantis is saying transgender people are dangerous. Wait, what do you mean? Kristen's working for traffic safety against a bill that would remove red light cameras because people are getting hit by cars, because people are running red lights. What, they're going to go, wait, he says it's dangerous. Wait, she's working to make our community better. That doesn't make sense.
Well, that is exciting. And Kristen, I just want to thank you. You're so candid and so inspiring. And I've been so looking forward to having this conversation with you. And I appreciate your time, and the guidance that you've provided. And I look forward to hearing lots more exciting things coming from you out of Florida. And I want to just thank you for joining the call.
Well, thank you, and thank everybody who's working to defend democracy. If you're in defense of democracy, you're a good guy. And don't think we don't know it.